Okay. Uh, so hi guys. Today we will be discussing about the basics of the pharma forecasting. So the motive of this channel majorly. So before starting the pharma forecasting, the motive of this channel is basically to so that I can also learn along with you. Okay. So what we will be covering majorly, we will be trying to cover it through this channel is basically the pharma forecasting and their models, and be it in demand product forecasting or new product forecasting or demand based forecasting. Okay, so along with that, we will be discussing various tools like risk, and there is one Optum. So these are Monte Carlo simulation tools. Then we will be discussing SQL, Python, how these can be helpful in pharma analytics. Also, along with that, we will be doing live case studies which are asked in the pharma forecasting interviews or any uh, uh, pharma analytics interviews, right? Okay, so let's start with firstly, before switching the gears, I would like for all of us to be on the same page. So I just want to recall a few basics of the pharma forecasting, right? So pharma forecasting majorly why we do is for the opportunity assessment, right? For example, let's say there is a manufacturer and they have identified a new molecular compound which can treat a specific disease or which can target a specific molecule, right? Or let's say the client has identified uh, or developed a drug which can treat a aggravated form of the cancer. So they want to conduct a study whether they should be launching this drug or not, right? Then sales and marketing support, portfolio management, and manufacturing decisions. So as a forecaster or as a pharma forecaster, you have to, when performing pharma forecasting, you have to keep collaborating with various stakeholders. So if you are associated with the manufacturing company, so you have to collaborate with the marketing team, finance team, um, MMD team and HHI team. Why marketing team? Because marketing team will be the one which will be giving you insights on your product positioning, on promotional activities, on any campaign impact. Then finance team will be giving you information regarding the whole year budget plans, right? Then MMD market access team will be giving you information regarding pricing strategy, any reimbursement policies, something like that. Then there is medical affairs team. Medical affairs team will be giving you information related to clinical data and how this clinical data can affect your drug adoption rate, right? Then there is distribution and HHI, right? So basically, pharma forecasting is of two types, right? One is the in-product forecasting, right? In-product forecasting, we also call it as pipeline product forecasting. So this is the forecasting for a molecule or for a drug which is still in the pipeline, right? Which is still not launched, be it in the phase 1 early stage, phase 0, phase 1 mid stage, phase 2 late stage, phase 3, right? So you perform pharma forecasting for the drug which is still in the clinical trial, right? Then there is demand based forecasting or trend based forecasting. So this forecasting is generally done for uh, the drugs which are already in the market. So demand based forecasting or the trend based forecasting, one more difference between these two type is we always conduct demand based forecasting for the short term, right? I have seen market research companies performing demand based, not demand based, they just do a trend based forecasting. What do they do is they have some number from the from their competitor, they call it as market research companies. For example, there is a X company, they are targeting their on market research companies, they have a specific number of a market, and they just do trend analysis. They just do the field series and they call it as a trend analysis. That's not trend analysis at all, that's not forecasting. Okay, that's not how it works. So basically demand based or trend based forecasting, it's not that simple, right? So demand based or trend based forecasting, can be done on the multiple. Uh, Firstly, okay, we were discussing. So this is for the short-term forecasting. We also call it short-term forecasting. We can't do demand-based or trend-based forecasting for 10 years, for 5 years even. We do it for 1 2 years because uh, we are estimating numbers. We are estimating we are forecasting numbers based upon the historical data. There can be multiple events down to 5 years in the line or 10 years in the line, right? There can be yeah, a number of events like new product launches can happen, loss of exclusivity can happen. So we perform demand based or trend based forecasting for short period only, right? It can be on anything. So you can perform trend analysis on on prescriptions, on on the sales, anything, right? So um, there are different components. We perform seasonality also here. uh, we we use actually Monte Carlo simulation here in the demand based trend based forecasting majorly, and we use risk also, which is a tool. So yeah, this is just the basics. So let's move to the in market product forecasting, which is for the market sizing of a product which is in the pipeline. So this is very important. Okay. uh, in market product forecasting. Okay. So for the in-market product forecasting, I will be trying to make a few models patient-based. So there are two types of models, patient-based and patient flow. Okay. So patient-based models will be the one that we will be working on mainly. Okay. In patient-based model, okay, but we majorly focus on the incidence, prevalence, diagnosis, treatment. You all must have heard of all these things. So firstly, let's go to the patient-based model. We don't perform patient flow model as such. It's very difficult to make patient flow model on the Excel. Okay. uh, I will let you know why. Just give me a second. Okay. So let's start with the patient based model. Okay. So in patient based, as the name indicates, patient will be our base for for getting to the right number. So let's say you are doing pharma forecasting for the X brand. Okay. X brand, by X brand, I mean you are forecasting for a single drug or single molecule. Okay. So first filter that you have to take is the population. Population can be anything. You can make segmentation on it, be it if you are doing forecasting for any country, you are doing forecasting for a specific, so you are, let's say your drug X brand is for a specific age group, then you have to give segmentation here. So there will be a lot of there could be possibly so many segments that we'll be discussing when we will be making the actual model, right? So then there is prevalence rate and then the incidence rate. Okay. So now, so the motive here is we need to first keep our basics ready, because once our basics are ready, only then we will be able to perform live pharma forecasting, right? So what do we understand by prevalence and incidence, and on which therapy areas we use prevalence and incidence? We will be discussing that here. Okay. So it's not that you can simply put prevalence in any model and incidence in any model. No, you have to first define your model. The first step in your forecasting is always to define your model, right? So prevalence and incidence. Okay, let me just check if this video is running. I don't know why. Always I have doubt. Okay, it's running. Okay, thank you. So yeah, so you cannot simply say I'm using prevalence. Okay, as once I was asking my peer, and I asked which model she used, and she said patient based for the cancer, and I asked her whether she took prevalence or incidence, and she says she took both. That's not possible. You have to choose either prevalence or incidence, right? we will be discussing that in detail. Okay, so what do you understand by prevalence? Most of you might know already. Okay, still we are gonna talk about it. So, okay, prevalence is that population. So from the population, you are taking the, let's say, prevalent population. You want to calculate the prevalent population. So prevalent population is both the diagnosed and the undiagnosed cases of a particular disease. Both these are both diagnosed and undiagnosed. Then there is another term which is called as diagnosed prevalence. So in diagnosed prevalence, we have only diagnosed cases. Okay. So prevalence is diagnosed and undiagnosed cases. So let's say, for example, there are 500. So there is a diabetes. Let's talk about diabetes. Okay. So let's say there are 500 cases of diabetes. Okay. Uh, and out of, we are checking, there are 500 cases of diabetes and the total population is, total population is 10,000. Out of the 10,000, 500 are diagnosis, 500 are diabetes population. This diabetes population can be either diagnosed or undiagnosed, right? So let's assume this is both the diagnosed and there can be some diagnosed population, there can be some undiagnosed population. So what will be the prevalence here? Prevalence will be 500 multiply 1000 divided by 1000, right? If you convert it into percentage, so 5% is your prevalence rate, right? Now let's assume out of those 500, only 400 are diagnosed. Diagnosed cases are only 400 and 100 are undiagnosed. So what will be your uh, diagnosed prevalence here? It will be 100 divided by 10,000, right? So it will be your, okay, I have taken 400. Sorry for that. Okay, 400. So 4% will be your diagnosed prevalence rate. Understood? So this is prevalence. Don't worry, we will be discussing where prevalence we use. Okay, so let's discuss here only. So prevalence is mainly used for the diseases which are chronic and the long term. So this is very important. Please keep a note on this. So prevalence is only recording. Okay, I'm sorry. So prevalence is only used in the cases where diseases are either chronic and long term. So you can see I have chosen diabetes here as an example. Why? Because diabetes is a long term disease. People do not majorly die because of the diabetes. Having said that, because mortality rate is very less. Okay, so diabetes so chronic and long-term conditions, why? Because here the treatment is always ongoing, right? Treatment is not hampering. For example, the major diseases where we'll be using prevalence is hypertension, diabetes, asthma, any for all the neurological disease, be it schizophrenia. So these are all a uh, these long-term care diseases. So here we will be using uh, prevalence. However, incidence, first let's talk about where to use. So incidence we will be using in those cases which are short-term treatments. Short-term, so okay, let me ask, just think about it. For the COVID, what will be using, what you will be using? Just analyze it, because COVID was a short-term treatment. So for COVID, we will be checking incident, right? Why incidence? Incidence is what? Uh, how many new cases are there, right? So let's say 1,000 cases of cancer are there in a particular disease, right? And out of those, from in the population of let's say 1 lakh, so 1,000 cases of uh, cancer are there, having said that, cancer is also used in for the cancer modeling. We use incidence always. Okay, one more reason for using incidence is because we for the cancer we make majorly make the monthly forecast. We do not make yearly forecast. We make short term and monthly forecasting for cancer. Okay, so here 1,000 new cases are there, so 1% will be your incidence rate, right? Now, for COVID, cancer, any influenza is there. So these are short-term disease, right? Dengue is there. Okay. So for these diseases, we'll be using incidence rate. Understood? So the third funnel in our forecasting is the diagnosed cases. How many population are diagnosed, and we'll be segregating undiagnosed from here. Then the fourth one is our treatment or treated population. Then the fifth one is we will be having our eligible population after this. Now you have to remember we were talking about making the pharma forecasting model for the X brand. Now for the X brand to calculate the revenue or for a particular year, you need to have share, some share for this brand, right? Be it product share. So how you will calculate this product share is it will be basically coming from either through your analog analysis or attribute analysis. Okay, so at analog analysis is what I will be making a detailed video on product share because this is a very important topic. We will be using various tools like IQVIA, MIDAS to calculate the product share. So basically, analog analysis is what we will be checking similar analogs for a particular brand. I will be explaining that in detail, right? We will be doing product life cycle and all these things in detail. So for this video, let's focus on the basics only. Okay, we generally take a lot of things. We consider a lot of factors while estimating product share, like uptake curve, what is the adoption, what will be the adoption curve, what will be the initial share, peak share, time to peak, any events that are happening, then share theft we will be checking, right? So once you have all these factors, then you have your population that are on the X brand. So after you have multiplied all of these factors, you have population that will be using your X brand or the volume of the patients. So after that, you apply a lot of the conversion factors. So conversion factors can be your compliance rate, persistence rate, or your adherence rate. So it's very important to understand these terminologies as well. What is compliance rate, persistence rate? We will be talking about that. Let's make then there is DOT, which is your duration of therapy. After DOT, there is price, and after that you have your revenue. So this is the basic this is very basic patient flow model which we make, but it will have more segments or more filters depending upon the therapy. For example, cancer will be very exhaustive, and the other therapy areas will be very exhaustive. So we will be making a complete model on that. Okay, uh, so conversion factors also, firstly you need to understand there the conversion. If sometimes interviews are asked questions like what would be your conversion factors in any model. So conversion factors will be your mainly compliance rate, persistence rate, uh, spelling, dosing, D or T, which is duration of therapy, pricing, GTN, which is gross to net ratio, then market access rate, uh, which so this percentage will be provided by the market access team. Then you will be checking other factors like loss of exclusivity, all this. After you have the revenue of your drug, right? You do a lot of analysis also after you have the output. So once you have the forecast result, you do the scenario analysis, right? What is scenario analysis? So for example, you have estimated, let's say this drug was, you remember we were talking about the in market product forecast, so you still have not decided the price, right? So let's say you have put $80 as a price, or you want to do scenario analysis. If I will keep my forecast as per $80, what will be the revenue? For $90, what will be the revenue? $100, what will be the revenue? Right. So similarly, we conduct sensitive analysis as well. Sensitive analysis is what we generally perform sensitive analysis, which is a phenomena which also we will be discussing, to check how the market share or the product share, how price, how eligible population will have out of these three or other factors, how much impact it will be creating on our forecasting. After that, we perform a lot of activities on our output of the results, be it output reporting, be it documentation of the resources and the assumptions, right? uh, After that, we have the polypharmacy and concomitancy. So what is polypharmacy? Polypharmacy is something, for example, there are multiple drugs for one disease, right? Patient is using multiple drugs for one disease. Let's say HIV. Patient is using product A plus product B, so that is, uh, or product C also. So this is polypharmacy. However, what is concomitancy? Sometimes we also have to keep, depending upon the disease, as I mentioned, pharma forecasting model depend upon the type of their disease or the therapy. So these terminologies we must be aware of, right? Concomitancy is what, there are multiple drugs for different disease. What does that mean? A patient is using multiple drugs for different disease. So for example, let's say there is a patient who has HIV and who has HCV. So that patient is using three drugs for HIV, three different drugs, and that patient is using two more drugs for HCV. So that is concomitancy, right? So these are the basic terminologies. Also, we all the in interviews, like for the companies like IQVIA and Indigene, so they always ask questions like on compliance rate, persistence rate, and adherence. So what is compliance, persistence, and adherence? So firstly, uh, there is a formula. Uh, So how do we calculate adherence rate? Okay, adherence rate is what, compliance rate multiply persistence rate. Okay. Uh, okay. Compliance rate, CR, persistence rate. So this is the short form is not defined. I'm just typing here. So do not use the short forms. Adherence rate is equal to compliance rate into persistence rate. So what is compliance rate and what is persistence rate? In one line sentence, I would say compliance rate is the execution, or execution, what does it mean is how much percentage of the drug a patient is taking. So compliance rate is depending upon the dosage, while persistence is how for how many days or for how many time frame the patient is persistent. So persistence rate is more linked to the timing, and compliance rate is more linked to the dosage. So talk let's go with the example here. So for example, compliance rate is how patient is complying with the uh, uh, prescribed dosage. Okay. So even if you will say this line in your interview, how many or how a patient is complying with prescribed dosage. So this is a complete definition, you can say. So how you calculate the compliance rate? Okay, so compliance rate, for example, there was a start of therapy, okay, and the doctors prescribed a medicine for the 45 days, and patient took medicine for 30 days only. So the actual prescribed time was 45 days, but the patient took medicine for 30 days only. So patient was complying for 30 days, right? So what does this mean? 30 divided by 45. So that is 66% of the compliance rate, or 67%, right? So similarly, persistence rate is for how many days? Simple. For example, uh, there were 100 patients for at the start of the therapy, and after 1 year, only 60 patients are there. So one first month there were 100 patients, and on the 12th month there are only 60 patients. So your persistence rate would be 60 divided by 100. That would be 60%, right? So this is the basic difference between compliance rate. Compliance is what how patient is complying with the prescribed dosage, and persistence is how a patient for how many days patient is complying. It's more inclined towards the time, right? So these are the basic I guess only these are the basics we need to consider. So sometimes in interview, from these basics only, I will be sharing model. I will be making live model in my next video, so please stay tuned. Okay, don't leave this video, we will be discussing important thing here. So let's say there is you have the patient's data, you have the total patient's data. Okay, so from the total patient's data, you want to come to the sales, you want to estimate the revenue. So let's say you have the total patient's data, how will you calculate the sales from the total patients? Just think about it, just take a few minutes and think about how will be you coming to the sales data from the total patients. So total patients, okay, you can pause this video and you can come to your answer. So if you have the total patients and you have the average daily dose, and if you have the DOT, which is the duration of therapy, right? Okay. So if you multiply all these, okay, total patients, average daily dose, and duration of therapy, what you will be getting is you will be getting total volume. Total volume. uh, so you always have to keep this formula in your mind. Revenue is what? Price into volume. So now these are, you had the total patient, you multiply it with the average daily dose and the duration of therapy, and then you got the volume. So after you get the volume, this is not your actual patients or actual volume. So with this, if you will multiply the compliance rate, you will be having the actual volume of the patient. So once you have the actual volume and you multiply it with the price, what you will be getting is you will be getting your revenue. Understood? So this is the basics. Let me just check if we uh, have to discuss more. So there are more. Uh, so we will be discussing how we will be getting data of all of these, right? Once we will be making our model, right? So we'll be doing that also. Okay, sure. If you like this video, please do subscribe. So the motive of this channel is not to um, you know to earn something. So this is not for the monetary purpose. This is so that I know there are a lot of people who wants to learn, but there are no enough sources available. I'm also not a pro, okay? So people are selling courses for 1,50,000, something like that. So I don't want to do that. I feel knowledge should be free. With this, if I'm sharing this knowledge, whatever I have learned in through these years, I spread it for free. So Only if you like and comment on this video and you subscribe this channel, I will just get that motivation to keep forming the video. Also, I will be sharing a live model. We will be doing live forecasting on a model uh, in by the end of this weekend, right? Thank you so much.